Next up on the Ghyran rules updates that we're going through, we're going to be looking at the Stormcast Eternals, who in their update have got themselves a lovely treat of 3 new heroic traits, 3 new artifacts of power, and an updated war scroll to a currently somewhat underperforming or historically underperforming unit, which is Iridan the Witness. Like we've seen with the other updates for the Maggotkin and the Seraphon that I've done so far, whilst these rules are good, they are in some cases competing with some already strong options in the armies, and with the Stormcast of course, they do have some okay traits, but I will say for this faction specifically, some of these new ones are actually substantially better than the ones in the main faction pack and army book. So first up we have Legendary Tenacity. This is a passive that grants the bearer a chance to be reborn after they are destroyed. So you roll a dice the first time the unit would be destroyed, and on a 3+, they aren't destroyed, and instead they heal D3. So essentially you can get up to 3 wounds back and essentially stick around and just keep on fighting with your hero, which is really quite solid, and it can definitely be really nice on something like a big monster hero like a Drakesworn Templar or a Lord Celestin on Stardrake, something like that. But even on some of your smaller foot heroes, it is always handy to keep them alive a little bit longer, just to keep buffing or supporting the rest of your army, so I'm actually quite a fan of this one. Intense Piety I also think is really good. It's an ability in your hero phase where you can pick an enemy priest or wizard within 18 inches of the bearer, you roll a dice, and on a 3+, that enemy wizard or priest is at -1 to any casting or chanting rolls until your next turn. So I really like this. Most armies will have a wizard or a priest, and they are very important, so making their spells and prayers just that bit harder to get off is really impactful. Now of course it's not super reliable, you do need to roll that 3 up to actually get it off, but I think if nothing else this works really well as a deterrent. It can really make your opponent not want to put their casters or priests near your hero just in case this thing does debuff them. So it is definitely going to be something that the enemy will play around, and if you do get into range of them, it is definitely something that is going to come into effect at least a couple of times throughout the game, and some games can be won or lost on a single spell or prayer going off, so being able to make that harder for your opponent is really important. The final new option is Hour of Glory. This is another passive. This one allows the bearer to be picked for their finest hour a second time, and when they do use it, they also get +5 to their control. So the finest hour is one of your battle traits. It gives a unit +1 to their save and +1 to their wound rolls for the turn, so it can make your hero more durable and more killy, and also better now at taking objectives, which is really great. Normally it can only be put on a unit once per battle, and then you have to cycle it across your army over the game, but being able to get it a second time could make a huge difference, especially if it's being put onto a hero that's going to be stuck in a few ongoing combats over the game. So it's another really nice, really useful one, and I have to say, just off the face of it, I think this one and Intense Piety are my favourites. Legendary Tenacity is nice, but personally I think it's the least useful out of the 3, and I can actually see myself taking Intense Piety or Hour of Glory quite often instead of the main army book options. In terms of your new artifacts of power, once again there are a few brilliant options in your army book, notably things like the Quicksilver Draft, which is pretty much an auto take, so these are going to have to be very good to be worth considering over that. And the Banner of Sigmar is the first to try. This is once per battle in your hero phase. It lets you pick an objective within 18 inches of the bearer, and then until the start of your next turn, the enemy cannot control it unless they have any units on it. So this can actually be really good. It can potentially stop your enemy from having control of a key important objective right when they need it to kind of get you ahead on points. So it's not the flashiest or most exciting artifact, but it can definitely help you win the scoring game and get more points than your opponent, which at the end of the day is how you win games of Age of Sigmar. So it's not the most exciting, but if you want to win games, this one being used at the right time could absolutely flip a game in your favour. Beacon of Azir is another once per battle artifact. This lets you pick a friendly wizard or priest wholly within 12 inches of the bearer in any hero phase, And whenever they next use a spell or prayer, they can use a value of a 7 for the roll. So essentially, they will automatically get off any spell that is cast value of up to 7, or pretty much any of your prayers. It's worth noting right now, this won't get you to the boosted version of your prayers, which is a shame, but it will essentially mean that you can guarantee getting off any spell that is a casting value of 7 or lower, or essentially any of your prayers at the baseline option, which is some fantastic reliability to your army. Your opponent can still attempt to deny this if you use it for something like a spell, so it isn't just a flat out guaranteed cast, but it does mean that you can 100% guarantee to get something like a translocation off or a bless weapons off on a unit, even in turn 1 if that's part of your game plan. So this can be really, really good. I think generally, I would say it's more decent than amazing, but it does add that super reliability for one important spell or prayer. So if you really need to kind of plan your game around that one thing going off, it could be vital. I just don't think that's the best game plan anyway. So kind of relying on this to go off means you're probably not going to have the best game plan, and the turn that it doesn't go off, if your opponent manages to unbind it, you are going to be completely scuppered. So from that point of view, I don't think it's the best pick, but it is still very, very good from a sheer reliability standpoint. The last new artifact is the Sigil of Mordor. This is a once per turn ability. Whenever an enemy declares a command or a rampage whilst they're in combat with the bearer, you roll a dice, and on a 3+, that command or rampage has no effect, but still counts as having been used. So essentially, if they've used a command point on something, that is still lost. This is again a little bit unreliable, being on a 3+, but on the flip side, it's a really, really powerful effect. Having the chance to deny something like an all-out attack or all-out defense, or some of the really, really scary rampages that some big units have, can be absolutely game-changing. Like from an absolutely top-level hilarious point of view, stopping something like a Hand of Dust from Nagash, or something like the Vengeance of Khorne from a Wrath of Khorne and Bloodthirster, can absolutely save your hero from certain death and really mess up any plans that the enemy might have had for a unit they were in combat with. So, not saying it's not risky, you know that the one time you really need this to go off and you really need to deny an enemy rampage or something, you will roll a 1 or a 2. But again, it's a really good deterrent. If your opponent knows that you've got this, they may not want to send their big monster in if they are relying on the rampage to get the most out of them. So it's good, it's a very powerful effect, it is just a bit risky because you need that 3+, and so from that point of view, although I think these artifacts are all pretty decent and have some potential, I'm still not entirely sure I would take any of them over something like the Quicksilver Draft. Yes, the Quicksilver Draft is only once per game, but it is so powerful and can be so impactful to your game plan. I still think it is a mandatory take for most Stormcast armies. So these are definitely worth a try out. And if you want to do for a slightly different game plan and maybe not have a Lord Terminus with some Reclusians or something, then one of these may be very well worth it on another hero. But personally, I still think the Quicksilver Draft on your Lord Terminus is one of the better, if not the best options in terms of artifacts that you have going for you. What I would say about these ones that in some ways is better than the Quicksilver Draft is they add a lot more utility. Being able to deny your opponent an objective, so winning on the points game, having the chance to deny commands and rampage and that sort of thing, they can be very, very good from a utility point of view. So if you do want to just play a bit more of a different Trixie style game, they could bring more for your army than just the flat out strike first that the Quicksilver Draft does get you. So overall, the heroic traits and artifacts, they are good. I don't think there's any in there that I would say is flat out bad, but some of them are just much better than others. And I think in terms of the artifacts, they still struggle from having the competition of the Quicksilver Draft to go up against. Lastly, however, in this video, we have the updated War Scroll for Iridan the Witness. He has gone up in points with this new profile. He is now 320 points instead of 290. But for that extra 30 points, you get some very, very good improvements. He keeps his 12 health, 3 up save, 12-inch move, and 5 control, but he now gains a 6 up ward save, which is a nice little bonus. He is still a 1-chant priest, which personally I think is annoying. I kind of wish he was a 2-chant priest, but either way, it is, if nothing else, a small buff to his durability, getting that 6-up ward. His output has also become a bit more reliable. His axe now does a flat 3 damage instead of D3, which is brilliant. The Talons of Ariax have also changed to do +1 damage on the charge instead of having the crit 2 hits rule, so he is better on the charge now, going up to a flat 3 damage, but on those ongoing combats he's a little less reliable with no exploding 6s, so it's a little bit of a mixed bag, but overall I would say it's largely a fairly good improvement in his output most of the time. Aside from that though, the big changes are, well, actually everything else. His entire war scroll is new abilities, so that is, if nothing else, really exciting, and it's going to be really fun to use him if you have the model and were never quite sold on his old war scroll before. Now, first caveat, despite a new name, his first few rules, Guardian of the Final Threshold and the Flames of Hope, are very similar to the old Ruination Chamber rule that he had, and the one that all Ruination Chamber units get, which is their 4-up resistance roll to any non-core abilities. Iridan instead though has Guardian of the Final Threshold. This is once per turn, you get to make a resistance roll. His is on a 3+, so on a 3+, you get to ignore any of those non-core abilities, which is incredibly strong. And also notably, it is a different rule to the standard Ruination Chamber rule. So as far as I am aware and as far as my understanding goes, you can use Iridan's as well as the one on something like your Prosecutors or your Reclusians. So essentially you will be getting 2 resistance rolls each turn, which is really good for stopping things like spells or out of phase shooting and that kind of thing. It can make a big difference to how well your units can do what you want them to do and just survive on the battlefield. On top of that, it gets even better because his rule, the Flames of Hope, that allows you to re-roll resistance rolls for friendly Ruination Chamber units wholly within 12 inches. So on things like your Reclusians or Prosecutors, this gets them a 4-up re-rollable, so essentially a 75% chance to ignore things like a spell, but on Iridan, that turns him into a 3-up re-rollable to ignore rampages, spells, all those kind of things. So it is massively better than it was before, and it makes your Ruination Chamber units so much better protected from those enemy non-core abilities that they may get thrown into them. So it's a really good ability now, and Iridan just makes it much more reliable. Elsewhere, he also has a new prayer and a new rampage. The prayer is Demands of the Witness. This is chanted on a 3+, so it's pretty nice and easy to get off. It lets you pick a friendly Ruination Chamber unit wholly within 12 inches, and they get +1 rend on their melee weapons. You can also choose 2 units with this if the chant was a 7+. So you could actually get this off if you had a friendly hero nearby with the Beacon of Azir artifact, which is quite nice. And being able to boost things like your Prosecutors or your Reclusians to Rend 2 is a whoppingly good improvement. It will really let them do a load more damage into an enemy target that they may be going into. It can even improve Iridan himself because he is of course within 12 inches of himself, so you can get him to Rend 3 on his axe and Ariax's talons, which just makes him insanely good at cleaving through most enemies in the game. His final rule is his rampage. This is also, in my opinion, a big improvement on the old one. On Wings of Death lets you in any combat phase pick an enemy unit you are in combat with and you roll a dice, and on a 3+, you get 2 effects. Firstly, you remove this unit from the table and set it up again as long as it is still within 1 inch of your original target, and you can also put a -1 to hit debuff on the enemy target unit if it's charged this turn. So if you get charged, then bam, on a 3+, you make them -1 to hit, which is amazingly good and can add a lot of durability to Iridan as well as anything else that has charged into combat that is near him. But the main power in this ability is the move. Being able to essentially pick this guy up and set him up again anywhere he wants that's within 1 inch of the target is so strong. If you get double charged by an enemy unit and say an enemy hero, and you don't want that enemy hero to be fighting, you can dip this guy out, stay within 1 inch of the main infantry unit that charged, but make it so that that enemy hero can't hit you now. Or on the other hand, if you made a charge in but didn't quite roll high enough, you could use this to get exactly where you need to be to maybe tag another enemy unit or get onto an objective that you were trying to reach. It is just fantastically strong. Obviously, if you make the charge, you don't get the potential -1 to hit, but that extra move ability can get you so much extra ground around the battlefield. It can really help you to avoid fights you don't want to be in, or drag enemies into fights that they maybe don't want to be in, or just help you steal an objective that the enemy thought was safe. It makes Iridan such a mobile threat, and it can really allow him to threaten almost anywhere on the board with his really good 12-inch move, and then a charge, and then essentially a move anywhere he wants almost, as long as you stay within 1 inch of the enemy unit that you pick. It is a lot of real estate to get this guy around on. So overall, I would say Iridan is really quite good now. He's always been pretty bad with his old profile, but now I actually think he is genuinely a very good pick. He is pricier, as I said, by 30 points or so, but I think that is well worth it. If nothing else, getting the better melee profile and the 6-up ward save, I would say, pays for most of that. The totally new set of war scroll abilities, all of which are really, really good upgrades, just makes him fantastic. He's a super strong utility piece for boosting your nearby ruination unit. He can be terrifying as a threat in terms of dragging in enemy units that don't want to be in combats with him, and he isn't bad in melee. Like, he's not got the best melee profile, but it is definitely better than it was before with that flat 3 damage and then the 3 damage from Ariax on the charge. So he can actually do a fair bit of work now into most enemy units. He is base 2 rend as well, which is really good in AOS. Dropping things like Chaos Warriors even down to a 5-up save does mean he can cleave through them pretty effectively. I really like the update. I think it's turned him from a very meh unit into a genuinely good one, which I think he deserves, because I also think he's got a fantastic model, and I don't own him, but I cannot wait to pick him up, get him built and painted, and just give him a try on the battlefield with this new rule set. As always though, I'd really love to know what you think of not only the new traits and artifacts, but also Iridan himself. Let me know if you've given any of them a try and how they've been performing for you in the new season. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me. But until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.